Okay, this video deserves a little bit of an introduction because I forgot to put it up somehow. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, I made this video, this trashy video, about a week ago, and it was supposed to go up on Tuesday. But for some reason, it just slipped my mind or something, and I didn't put it up. I don't know how that worked out. Anyway, it was supposed to go up on Tuesday, and here it is going up now. So it's a little late. And I referenced some videos that I was supposed to make this past week, but didn't. I'll make them this week, coming up. Epic Comic Book Wednesday, I'll do that this week. So, yeah. So I've read 2 books for Garbaugust since this video, and I'll talk about those coming up in another video. So, yeah, this is just an introduction saying, yeah, this video is coming up very late. Okay, guys. Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to the trashy Vaughn Manor. Yes, we've gone from class to trash here at Vaughn Manor. And it's all the fault of Garbaugust. Garbaugust, the reading event created by criminal mastermind Screamin'Creamin'Olly. Screamin'Creamin'Olly is actually a pretty great channel. He has a great booktube channel. You should all check out Screamin'Creamin'Olly. You probably already have. So yeah, Screamin'Creamin'Olly created this great booktube event, Garbaugust, a celebration of trashy fiction. Fiction that is looked down upon by society at large. So yeah, books that are considered trash. Now, that doesn't make these books bad. Although one of these books I'm going to be talking about today is pretty bad. But just because it's considered trash by society doesn't mean that it's bad. I have 4 books that I read last week. So every week of Garbaugust has a theme. And last week's theme was vintage trash. That is, trash that was published before 1980. And I read 4 books, which is more than I usually am able to read in a week, but they're all short, so that's probably why. The first book I'm going to be talking about, as we take out last week's trash, is Traitor's Legion. Traitor's Legion by John Jakes. John Jakes, who rose to fame through his Kent Family Chronicles series of historical novels. He also wrote the North and South series, which were also a big hit. But before he wrote those books, he wrote Brack the Barbarian, and he also wrote this. This is Traitor's Legion, which he wrote under the pseudonym J. Scotland. There were actually a few books that he wrote as J. Scotland. There's a little list here. Strike the Black Flag, Sir Scoundrel, and Arena. I'm going to have to hunt all those down because I really enjoyed this one. Traitor's Legion, a trashy historical novel. It's really trashy. This reminds me of one of those old sword and sandals epic films. Those really cheap sword and sandals films that used to be made in Italy and had really awful dubbing. You ever see any of those? This kind of reminds me of one of those. It's full of sex and violence, and it takes place during the First Punic War. Hannibal is a character in this. Our hero, Linus Julius, is a member of a legion that has been disgraced because they got their asses handed to them by Hannibal, and the Roman Republic just can't accept it. It's fun. It's fun. It's not exactly historically accurate, but it's a good time. Very melodramatic. So melodramatic. It was very entertaining. I like this one, Traitor's Legion. Certainly, if you're ever lucky enough to stumble across it, I recommend you pick it up and read it because it's so much fun. I don't know if there's an ebook copy of this or any of the other J. Scotland books. Who knows? But I'm glad I found it. Even the cover is really cheesy and fun. So, Traitor's Legion, this is how I started off my vintage week. And then I read a book that is legitimately really, really good. This is a really good book. This is Nightwing by Martin Cruz Smith. Now, this is a horror novel from, it's from 1977. On the back, it has the obligatory Stephen King blurb, because he has to blurb everything. One of the best horror novels in the last 20 years. So I don't know if that was true back in 77. That would take it back to 1957, I guess. But regardless of whether it was actually the best horror novel of the last 20 years from 77, it was a really good book. Killer animal books are apparently automatically trashy books. Those are the rules of trashy books, apparently. And this is about killer vampire bats. It is a great killer animal book. Really excellent characters in this book. A plot that moves right along. Excellent pacing. The scenes of horror are excellent. It was a lot of fun. Really, really good horror novel. So, Nightwing by Martin Cruz Smith. I highly recommend this, not just as a trashy book, but just as a horror novel. It's excellent. And I'm not surprised that they reprinted this. This used to have a much trashier cover back in 1977. I'm not surprised they reprinted this because it is such a good book, and I do highly recommend it if you enjoy horror novels. The next book, unfortunately, was terrible, and this could go down as the worst Garbaugust book I read. It could. It's even worse than Bio of a Space Tyrant that I read the week before. This is Vulcan by Kathleen Sky. So this was a book that I read not just for Garbaugust, but also for Book Trek 2022. This was a Star Trek novel from the 70s. So, you know, it fits the bill. If it's a movie tie-in, it automatically is trash. Those are the rules, apparently. So this fits right in with Garbaugust and Book Trek, and boy was it bad. So this is bad for a whole bunch of reasons. For one thing, none of the characters in this book really seem like themselves if you watched the original Star Trek television series. Captain Kirk is kind of like himself. Spock sort of is, but Spock says a bunch of stuff that Spock wouldn't say, and by the end of the book, he really doesn't seem a heck of a lot like Spock. Dr. McCoy, it's the worst with Dr. McCoy, because Dr. McCoy acts like a lovesick teenager through this entire book. And that is not Dr. McCoy. The plot of this is ridiculous. So, there's a planet that's moving into Romulan space across the neutral zone. It's moving into Romulan space. And before that happens, the Enterprise has to find out whether there's intelligent life on this planet. So they have to take along this biologist, Catalia Tremaine, to go along with them. They really don't need to. You'd think Spock would be smart enough, but no, they have to take this Catalia Tremaine along. And it turns out that she's a horrible racist. She's a member of Starfleet, but she's a horrible racist. She has a great prejudice against Vulcans, and as soon as she beams aboard, she takes one look at Spock and says, "I'm not working with any dirty Vulcan." And then she goes on about how much she hates Vulcans and how terrible Vulcans are. Now, this takes place in the future when we are supposed to be past all of our petty differences, including racism. So this is peculiar because it's tolerated. Now, imagine any major company, somebody working for that company walking up and going, "I'm not working with this person because of what this person is, or what their background is, or what they look like. I'm not working with this person." They would be fired, like immediately. If you have those kind of racist, prejudiced beliefs, and you just shout about it out loud in front of everybody, you would be immediately fired, no matter who you are. Not in Starfleet, apparently, according to this book. So Dr. McCoy is there, and he sees this rant, and he's like, "Man, it really sucks that she doesn't like Mr. Spock because she's a bigot, and I don't like that, but she's so hot. I think I'm in love." So Dr. McCoy immediately falls in love with her because, she's so hot. And he vows to himself he's going to cure her of her racism. So, and I don't know what was going on in the 1970s. I was just a kid in the 70s, thank goodness. But apparently everybody in the 70s thought about sex like all the time. Like all the time they thought about sex. I get this from the books I read that were written during the 70s. And this book is just like that. I mean, Dr. McCoy, because he thinks this super racist doctor woman is so hot, he hits on her very inappropriately, like right away. And, you know, that would be enough to get him fired. But, you know, she's cool with it, you know, as long as he puts up with her terrible bigotry. And Captain Kirk is like, he seems a little bit more realistic. And then he's like, man, I hate that this woman is bigoted against Mr. Spock. I wish I didn't have to have her on the Enterprise. She's so terrible, but she's so hot. I mean, it's just... and the plot was, aside from that bit of ridiculousness, not very good. It was slow until like the last portion. And in the last portion, it started getting a little exciting because these killer ant creatures start eating everybody. And that was cool. I'm all up for killer ants eating people. All the red shirts, of course, get killed right away, as is proper. She got that right. But everything else in Star Trek, she got wrong. And so it's not a very good book even... I mean, it's not a very good Star Trek book. It's a crap Star Trek book, actually. And it's not a very good book. So Vulcan, that sucked. So then I moved on to Doc Savage. Doc Savage, The Thousand-Headed Man by Lester Dent, writing as Kenneth Robeson. So Doc Savage was a pulp hero from the 30s. He had a pulp magazine that he starred in that it lasted a good long time. And then in the 60s and into the 70s, Bantam, it's Bantam, right? Yeah, Bantam republished this series with these great new paperback covers. And it became very popular. I read last year, was it? Was it that long ago? I think maybe. I read the first one, The Man of Bronze. I've read a few Doc Savages, but not in any kind of order. And so I decided to read this one. This is the second volume in the Bantam reprint line, The Thousand-Headed Man. Now, this does have some unfortunate period racism. And it's actually pretty bad against Chinese people, which shows you just how prevalent these racist attitudes were in the 1930s, where this was very common in pulp fiction. You'll stumble across this kind of thing pretty often. It's particularly bad in this story. I would say it's worse in this particular story than you'll find in a lot of other pulp stories at the time, and that's saying something. So that's unfortunate. The story itself is actually a pretty good Doc Savage adventure. It's exciting, it's fun, it just has, you know, terrible racism from the time, directed at Chinese people. And like I said, I think that was pretty common at the time, unfortunately. And so, you know, if you go back in time to this time and read these adventures from the 1930s, you're going to stumble across that. Because these stories, they're little time capsules, not just of the type of fiction that people like to read back then, but their social attitudes as well. And so looking at this now, you know, it's good that that stuff wasn't removed, actually, when they reprinted this in the 60s. Because it's important that that stuff is left in there. I mean, unfortunate though it was that it existed at all, it's important to know that it existed, and it's important to know how bad it was, too. So, yeah, that's in here. Interesting book. Fun book, actually, if you can get past that. Like I said, it's a good Doc Savage adventure. Not the best I've read, but it's good. Good, solid adventure story. So, yeah, there you go. Doc Savage. I finished up my trashy week with Doc Savage. And this week, I believe, is Anything... I think this is Anything Goes week. You just read whatever the heck you want this week. And so I'm doing that. I probably won't read as many books this week just because my schedule is a lot busier this week than it was last week, but we'll see. We'll see how much I get done. So yeah, that was my Garbaugust week. I will link all of my Garbaugust co-hosts down below so you can check out their channels and watch their exciting trashy videos. I will catch you tomorrow with more trash. I should have my comic book video up tomorrow where I'm talking about Killraven, a particularly trashy 1970s comic book. That was a lot of fun, actually. And then I'll get classy after that. I'll get classy towards the end of the week. I promise. Okay, guys, I will catch you next time.